got a text that said, "I missed last night." The phone lit up while I was charging it for her. I still remember the sound her phone made. It wasn't even the text itself, it was that tiny little bzzzt vibration when the screen lights up while it's plugged in. A stupid sound, a nothing sound, but somehow it was the sound that detonated my whole life. Her phone wasn't even on her side of the bed. It was on mine, plugged into my charger because I was being helpful. Because I was doing that cute, good husband thing I always did, picking up the slack for her when she fell asleep on the couch again. She'd been exhausted lately. That was her favorite line these days. I'm tired. Too tired to talk, too tired to cuddle, too tired for sex, too tired to watch a movie, even tired to even sit next to me, apparently. But somehow she was never too tired to be on her phone. She always had enough energy to scroll, giggle at something, type fast, tilt the screen away from me just slightly. Nothing dramatic, you don't even connect the dots until you found out about the betrayal. Anyway, that night she'd passed out early on the couch again. I picked up her phone because the battery was at 3%, and if that thing died during the night, she would wake up at 6 a.m. in full meltdown mode. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't suspicious. I was literally just plugging it in for her being a good husband, like the dumb, naive idiot I still sometimes miss being. I put it on my nightstand, used my charger, then went back to scoop her off the couch and walk her to bed. She mumbled something, half asleep, leaned into me, and for half a second I thought, she still loves me. She's just tired. When I came back into the bedroom, the screen lit up. One message, one stupid line that might as well have been a bullet. I missed last night. I swear the whole world went silent. My lungs forgot how to work, my hands turned to stone. My brain froze so hard I think even my soul stopped moving. And then everyone talks about fight or flight, but they forget the third option, freeze. And that's exactly what I did. My brain, God bless it, immediately tried to save my marriage by making up the dumbest excuses imaginable. Maybe it was a coworker, maybe last night meant like a movie. Maybe it was a group chat joke, or maybe she forgot to delete spam. Maybe all the delusional bullshit your mind tries to feed you when it doesn't want to accept the truth. But I wasn't stupid, and I wasn't blind. Nobody texts a married woman I missed last night because they had a really uplifting prayer meeting. My heart was pounding so loudly I actually looked at her to make sure it didn't wake her up. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to be that guy checking his wife's phone. I hated the idea of being suspicious, but I opened her phone. Her lock screen wallpaper was a picture of us smiling on our anniversary trip. I knew her password. She hadn't changed it, probably because she knew I never checked her phone. I was too trusting. The messages loaded, and not just one. Paragraphs, whole conversations. You would think cheaters delete things, right? Not her. Nope. She apparently had so much confidence in me or in her own lies that she didn't bother clearing anything. There were messages replaying what they did, figuring out when she could slip out again. Inside jokes, flirting, plans. Every sentence felt like sticking my hand into a blender. My knees literally wobbled. I felt like my ribcage had collapsed inward, like I was swallowing fire. My first instinct wasn't to wake her up screaming. It wasn't to throw the phone across the room. It wasn't to storm out dramatically. No, my first instinct was to kneel on the floor and cry like a child, but I didn't. I put the phone down carefully, gently, like it was something that might explode if I dropped it. Then I crawled into bed and lay next to her, the woman I apparently didn't know, and tried to sleep. I couldn't. My chest felt tight, my throat hurt, my whole body felt wrong. I replayed that stupid message on a loop. I missed last night. Last night. Last night. While she told me she was working late. Last night while I heated up dinner alone. Last night while I put our 4-year-old to bed by myself. Last night while she came home late and took a 20-minute shower I didn't think twice about. Now it felt obvious. Now it felt insulting how easily she got away with it. I lay awake for hours until time stopped meaning anything. My marriage had just ended at 1:13 a.m. on a Thursday night, all because I tried to be a good husband and charge her fucking phone. There's a weird, ugly skill you learn when something huge breaks in slow motion. You learn how to act like you're not dying while you stitch your exit strategy together. I became a professional at that overnight. At first, there was hollowness, that empty, stunned feeling that sits in your chest like a rock. Then that hollowness curdled into anger. Not the kind of scream at the top of your lungs anger. The quiet, patient kind that thinks 10 steps ahead. The kind that doesn't waste energy on yelling because yelling just leaves a mess you'll have to clean up later. That was me. I didn't say a word. I didn't confront her. I watched the way she moved around the house like some actor playing a role I used to believe in. I watched her laugh at stupid videos, watched the way she kissed our son at bedtime, watched her pour coffee in the morning like it was the most normal thing in the world. Behind that easy smile I kept plastered on my face, everything inside me was grinding like a fucking machine running too hot. I didn't fall apart. Not then, not in those early days. That came later, months later, when the adrenaline drain finally hit me like a brick wall. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. Once the initial shock fades, your brain stops trying to understand and starts trying to survive. And when I switched into survivor mode, every instinct in me sharpened. No crying, no spiraling, no begging, just cold, steady calculation. If this was going to end and I could feel in my bones that it was, I wasn't walking into that end blind. I wasn't going to show up in court babbling through tears, hoping someone would believe me. I wasn't going to be the guy with empty hands and a broken story. I was going to stand on solid ground. Facts under my feet, receipts in my pocket, proof so tight it couldn't be argued with. And the thing is, I wasn't doing it out of some vengeful desperation to burn her life down. I wasn't trying to destroy her reputation or punish her for hurting me. My priority was simple: my son, his stability, his future. I needed to make decisions with a clear head, and you can't have clarity without information. So I started digging, quietly, methodically, carefully. The very first rule: preserve the original evidence. Touch nothing more than you absolutely have to. People screw themselves over all the time by trying to collect everything and accidentally corrupting half of it. So I made copies. Not sloppy screenshots in random folders, actual documented, timestamp preserved copies. I learned real quick how metadata gets wiped if you're careless. I treated that phone like it was a crime scene, gloves on, metaphorically. Then I requested our phone records. Perfectly legal. Any account holder can download itemized logs of calls and texts. And those logs, those were gold. They don't lie. They don't forget. They don't get emotional and mix up dates. I combed through every timestamp, every late night gap, every strange cluster of calls. I wasn't reading between lines. I was connecting dots she didn't even know she had left behind. Next came location traces. People forget how loud phones are, even when you think they're quiet. Photo timestamps, Google Maps history, Wi-Fi connection logs, synced app data. It's all a breadcrumb trail. Not a full map, but enough pieces to start building a picture. I didn't want to know who she was with. I just wanted enough evidence to prove she was with someone other than me. I exported everything I legally had access to from our shared accounts, from the devices on our home network, from the backups she never bothered to turn off. And just like that, the puzzle edges began forming, slowly, surely, and quietly. While on the outside, I stayed calm. I dug deeper: receipts, bank statements, joint account logs. Yeah, I archived all of it. Not because I suddenly wanted to become some forensic accountant, but because money leaves fingerprints people forget about. If there were trips, hookups, meetings that weren't meetings, then there would be transactions somewhere. Gas stations off routes she never drives, hotel charges under the MISC services label, ride shares at weird hours going to places she never mentioned, Venmo notes with emojis that suddenly made way too much sense, restaurant tabs that didn't match the stories she gave about where she'd been. I sat there some nights just scrolling line by line, highlighter in hand, feeling like the world's most miserable accountant. But it mattered. Paper trails always matter. And then came the really grim part: researching laws. I had to sit down, literally sit down, because it was that heavy, and start reading my state's divorce statutes. Not exactly fun bedtime material, but ignorance is expensive, and I wasn't going into this blind. Our state allowed fault-based grounds, and adultery wasn't just a word in the emotional sense. It actually played a legal role. Judges can consider it for how assets get split, for spousal support. So, yeah, I went full nerd on it. I bookmarked articles, skimmed case law summaries, even fell into those chaotic online forums where strangers argue like amateur attorneys. You learn a surprising amount from a guy with a username like Divorce Dad 1982. Eventually, I called a few law offices, not to hire anyone yet. Lawyers cost more than my entire gaming setup, but just to ask what an initial consult looks like, what evidence even matters, how judges typically handle cases like mine. I wanted a roadmap, a direction, anything to steady me. And since custody was the one thing I had zero wiggle room on, I documented everything related to our son. Every school event I attended, every pediatric appointment I handled, every day I did drop off or pick up solo, Every receipt for clothes, groceries, activities, anything that showed I was the stable parent, keeping his routine intact. I kept records of all of it, not because I wanted to win custody like some trophy, but because stability matters and I needed to show I wasn't just present, I was reliable. I also quietly backed up our shared accounts: email, cloud photos, shared calendars, anything that logged where someone had been or what they were doing. I archived everything. I didn't alter a single thing, I just saved copies before anything could vanish. It felt invasive, like I was snooping through a life that was supposed to be ours. But when the ground beneath you is shaking, when your gut is screaming that something is wrong, you'll cling to any piece of evidence that tells you you're not imagining it. This all took weeks, real weeks. The kind where the days are fast, the nights stretch, and sleep becomes this optional hobby you barely remember how to do. I'd get up early for work like nothing was wrong, come home, pick up our son from school, and slip right back into dad mode. Dinner, homework, bath time, bedtime stories, the whole routine. And honestly, that part kept me sane. He was the one place in my life where nothing felt contaminated. Nothing felt fake. Nothing felt like it was crumbling. So, yes, all the digging, all the evidence gathering, it happened in the cracks. The hours after everyone was asleep, the early mornings when the house was quiet, the moments where most normal people go watch TV or unwind. I was busy trying to make sense of the life I suddenly found myself in. And I told no one. Not my friends, not her friends, not my family, and definitely not hers. There's no prize for being the guy who explodes first and publicly. No benefit to broadcasting the implosion of your marriage to people who will inevitably pick sides based on who they like better or who tells the story louder. I needed to be intentional, not theatrical. So I kept the act up. I played the same easygoing husband I'd always been, smiled, nodded, sat on the couch with her while she laughed at her phone, tilting the screen away like she wasn't doing something that already scorched a hole through my chest. I pretended not to notice, pretended not to ache, pretended not to feel like I was wearing a mask made of wet cement. And during that same week, I took our son to the aquarium, held his little hand while he pressed his nose against the glass to stare at the jellyfish, watched him bounce in excitement. That moment kept me human. It reminded me exactly what I was fighting for, what all this quiet suffering was for, what I was stalking the truth for, what I was bidding my time for, what I was performing for, all while planning. What if she proved unfit for custody? What if the asset division got messy? What if she tried to paint herself as mother of the year? Could I afford the house on one income? Could I buy her out? Did I need to start moving money aside for a lawyer immediately? Could I manage work and primary custody at the same time? These weren't dramatic questions. They were painfully practical ones, the kind that keep you awake even when you're bone deep exhausted. And I'll be honest, I'm not proud of turning our marriage into a checklist. I hated the tiny, messed up triumph I felt every time something lined up. When a timestamp matched a suspicious gap. When a late night charge on the bank statement matched the working late text. It made me feel cheap, like I was picking through broken pieces hoping they'd cut her instead of me. But you know what? Even that tiny scrap of certainty felt better than sitting in the dark with nothing but questions. I cataloged everything. I organized every document like I was preparing for a court case I hadn't yet admitted to myself I was absolutely headed toward. It's kind of wild how fast you can split into two people without even noticing. One minute you're just you, and the next you're living this double existence like you're auditioning for a spy movie you never asked to be in, and the whole time I never judged her out loud. Never accused, never even raised an eyebrow. I just watched. Of course, she was still sneaking around. She thought she was subtle, thought her flimsy excuses were airtight. I let her think she was clever. It made things easier for me. The irony was enough to give me acid reflux. She used to be the one with all the speeches, the moral queen, the ethical lighthouse, the one who lectured me and literally anyone breathing within a 5-foot radius about cheaters. Cheaters are cowards. Cheaters are emotionally stunted. Cheaters are selfish children who can't communicate. Cheaters are the worst kind of human beings. Blah, blah, blah. Every one of those monologues replayed in my head every time she tiptoed out under a ridiculous excuse. Every time she flinched when her phone lit up. Every time her battery died in the middle of the day. Every time she came home with that look, she tried to pass off as exhaustion, but I had stared at that look in the messages she sent him. I knew exactly what that glow was. The hypocrisy made me sick, but I never said a word. The only thing that stopped me from collapsing under the weight of it all was our son. Thank God for him. Thank God that even before all this, I'd always been the closer parent, not because she was a bad mom, she wasn't, but because he and I just clicked. Always had. He's the kid who sits on the floor and builds trains and worlds, and I'm the dad who sits with him and makes up dinosaur sound effects. She's always been the strict one. Structure, rules, dietary limits, and I wasn't the opposite of that, but I was the one who played more, the one who said, yes, one more story, the one he crawled onto when he felt small. And with her suddenly gone all the time, he glued himself to me even more. And I latched onto that bond like it was the last rope keeping me from drowning. Every time my chest felt like it was being carved open from the inside, I'd look at him. Every time anger started boiling up, I'd hear him laugh. Every time I saw her face twitch when a notification popped up, I'd remind myself, do not do anything that could hurt this kid. He deserved a father who stayed steady, so I stayed steady, even when it felt like it was turning my insides into cement. And then the voice started. Not the reasonable one, the cruel one at 3 a.m., the one that shows up when the house is dead quiet and your chest feels too tight. What if he isn't mine? Stupid, right? Impossible. The kid looks exactly like me. Same eyes, same smile, same cowlick that refuses to obey gravity. Even strangers pointed it out all the time. But betrayal does something to your wiring. It pulls every confidence you've ever had into question, even the things you know in your bones. So I did the one thing I never thought I would ever do in my entire life. I ordered a DNA test. Not because I genuinely believed he wasn't mine, no. It was because my brain refused to shut the hell up. It kept nudging, scratching, whispering the same toxic little what if over and over until sleep felt like a rumor. So I ordered a private kit, one of the serious ones, not the cheap ones with cartoon graphics and questionable science. And I ordered it quietly, almost guiltily, like I was buying something illegal. It felt humiliating, wrong, and disgusting. But it also felt necessary, the kind of necessary you resent but can't avoid. The day I mailed it out, I swear my chest felt hollow. I stood there at the mailbox with the envelope in my hand thinking, what kind of father even does this? I felt like I had crossed some invisible line, like I was committing a betrayal of my own even though no one would ever know. Not him, not her, not anyone, and the weight nearly killed me. Every day that passed, I watched my son as if I were studying him, really studying him. Every angle of his face, every expression, every giggle, every habit that mirrored mine. And the whole time, guilt wrapped around my ribs like a vice. He is mine. Of course he's mine. Look at him. But fear doesn't care about logic. Fear doesn't care about facts. Fear is just fear, loud and stupid and relentless. When the envelope finally arrived, my hands shook so violently I almost tore it in half. I sat on the bed, took a deep breath, and opened it. 99.99% probability of paternity. I don't think I fully exhaled until that moment. It felt like someone finally unclenched a fist around my heart. Like one piece of my life was still intact. Still real. He was mine. Not theoretically, not obviously, not just look at him, but on paper. Undeniably. For the first time in months, I sat on the edge of the bed and just breathed. With that chapter closed, evidence gathered, it was time to finally talk to my wife. This whole wait period of gathering evidence had turned me methodical and obsessive. Efficient to the point of overkill. I had so much evidence at that point, it felt like I was the CIA. Like I was auditioning to be James Bond, except the budget was depression and the mission was heartbreak. All because a tiny part of me was avoiding the confrontation. Gathering evidence was easier than looking her in the eyes and saying the words out loud, saying, I know you're cheating on me with some guy, saying I've known for months. So I kept digging, kept collecting, kept pretending, until I couldn't do that anymore and had to confront her. That morning, she told me she was going out with the girls. 3 bars, maybe 4, lots of catching up, a late night. I nodded and smiled, played along. I even told her to have fun. She promised she'd be home by 11. She came in at 1:47 a.m. drunk. I was sitting on the couch, lights off, phone face down, wide awake. She froze when she saw me. Hey, she slurred. Hey, I said. I didn't raise my voice, didn't glare, didn't do anything dramatic. But something in me had changed, and she felt it instantly. Maybe it was in my voice, or maybe in my eyes. Maybe in the way I wasn't pretending anymore. Why are you awake? She asked, wobbling slightly. I shrugged. Wanted to talk? About tonight? Panic flashed in her eyes. Quick, small, but absolutely there. The same flicker I'd seen for months. The same, oh shit, she thought she hid well. I told you girls' night, she said, defensive and shaky. I know. And I didn't push. Not while she was drenched in vodka and wearing someone else's cologne like a perfume sample. The whole situation was almost comically pathetic. We'll talk tomorrow, I said. You're drunk. She scoffed, probably relieved, thinking she'd dodged something. Then I stood up and added, I'll sleep in the guest room. That hit her. She turned, brow furrowing. Why? Because I want you sober when we talk. And I walked away before she could say a word. The guest room mattress was thin and lumpy, but I slept better on that awful thing than I had in months. The next morning, I got up early, earlier than I had in a long time, and made our son breakfast. Pancakes shaped like lopsided dinosaurs, the way he liked them. He giggled the whole time, blissfully unaware of anything breaking apart around him. Afterward, I drove him to my sister's place for a fun weekend. He was excited before I even pulled into her driveway. My sister opened the door, took one look at me, and didn't ask a single question. She didn't have to. Whatever she saw on my face said everything. She just put a hand on my shoulder and nodded like, yeah, I got him. When I came back home, the house felt too still. Not peaceful, just hollow. She was awake, but still in bed. Hair messy, mascara smeared into gray half-moons under her eyes. She looked up the moment I stepped inside like she'd been listening for my footsteps. Hey, she whispered, voice raspy. What happened last night? Why did you act weird? I pulled the chair up across from the bed and sat. Let's talk, I said. She stiffened immediately, like her body heard the truth before her brain did. About what? I reached into the nightstand drawer, the same place I'd hidden everything, and pulled out the stack of printed messages, screenshots, timestamps, all of it. I placed it on the edge of the bed like a judge, laying down evidence. Her face lost color so fast it was like watching a bucket of paint drain. She swallowed hard. What? What is that? You know what it is? She stared at the papers like they were an explosive with a slowly blinking red light. She didn't even fake innocence at first. She just froze. Then the panic kicked in. Then the denial, like stages in a textbook. These are taken out of context. They're not. You don't understand what was happening. I understood enough to put dates together. She grabbed the papers, fingers trembling, flipping through them too fast, scanning for some miracle excuse that wasn't coming. This isn't what it looks like. He's just a guy who texts you after midnight, a guy whose number you didn't save but whose notifications you hide, a guy you stay late at work with on days your location says you weren't at work, a guy whose cologne followed you home last night. Her mouth snapped shut like someone had flipped a switch. She tried again, weaker this time. It just happened, okay? I didn't plan it. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just wanted something different. Something exciting, something fun. I don't know. I love you. I do. I love our family. I zoned out. Just gently left the conversation because I'd already heard every word before she even said them. It was the same speech I'd read on forums, in articles, in other people's horror stories. Scripted, predictable. Her mouth was moving, but her words were static, just noise in the background. By the time I tuned back in, she was crying. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, we can fix this. I contacted a lawyer, I said calmly. She froze mid-breath. What? Her voice cracked hard. I'm filing for divorce. Her whole face collapsed in on itself like she'd been struck. She stared at me as if the world had tilted. I want custody, I added. That shattered her. Fully. You can't just... We can go to counseling. We can fix... We're past fixing. She cried harder, reaching for me across the sheets, but I didn't move. I didn't comfort her. For the first time, my silence wasn't numbness, it was clarity. Finality. A door closing. By Saturday night, the house felt like a mausoleum. My son was safe at my sister's. She was in the bedroom sobbing into a pillow, and I was in my study with the door locked. I opened my laptop, typed 2-bedroom apartment plus our city, and started scrolling. Every listing felt wrong, too cramped, too dark, too far from my sister. No room for my son's trains. Nothing felt livable. Nothing felt like a home. This was supposed to be our dream house, the place we built from scratch. We picked paint. We set up the nursery. We fought over the backsplash. And suddenly, it felt like a stranger's place. After scrolling for a while, I decided I would just stay with my sister. She had a big house. She was a widow. She always said it felt too empty. She'd take us in without blinking. My son would have space, safety, normalcy. someone responsible around when I worked, and a place for his trains. I closed the listings, closed the laptop, and sat there for a long time, listening to the house breathe like a living memory I was about to walk away from. Everything was breaking, but for the first time in months, I felt lighter. I had finally confronted her, I had finally spoken up, and I knew what to do next. After that, I moved fast. Cold, methodical, efficient, the way a man gets when the heart is already gone and all that's left is duty. I stayed in contact with my lawyer constantly, tracking every update, every draft, every requirement. I knew exactly when the papers would be ready. I knew the day she'd be served. Knowledge was the only thing standing between me and collapse. During that last week before I moved out, I gathered my things quietly, piece by piece. I unplugged my custom PC carefully, packed the components. I folded clothes neatly. I grabbed my tools from the garage. I boxed my son's trains. I took sentimental items, wedding photos included, and tucked them away. Every action cut a little, but I didn't flinch. She noticed, of course, and she spiraled. She tried talking to me relentlessly, pacing, crying, grabbing my arm, begging for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, anything. When I stayed silent, she swung between desperate and furious. Her voice rose, cracked, steadied, cracked again. She hurled excuses, she hurled apologies, she hurled blame. I stayed calm. Our son spent most of that week with my sister, partly because she offered, partly because his mother was too wrapped up in her own panic to notice. She didn't even fight it. A week after the confrontation, I moved out. Moving day was quiet, heavy, awful. She stood in the doorway, mascara streaked, crying, begging, pleading, reaching for me while I carried boxes to the car. I didn't snap at her. I didn't yell. I didn't comfort her. I didn't say the things she wanted to hear. I walked past her with the last box and said nothing. There was no fixing something this broken. She wasn't actually sorry, not really. She would have kept going if I hadn't caught her. Hours after I left, she called, then texted, then called again. I told her once that everything needed to go through the lawyer unless it was about seeing our son. She ignored that. She spammed my phone anyway, so I muted her. The first few days at my sister's place were strange, not dramatic, not catastrophic, just numb. I moved through the world like a ghost wearing a skin suit, doing normal things with a body that didn't feel like mine. I worked, I took care of my son, I spent time with him, played with him, tucked him in. I barely answered my wife unless she asked to see our boy. And even then, it wasn't often she asked. Our son asked more than she did, and every time he looked up at me with those big eyes and said, "Where's mommy?" something inside me twisted just enough to bruise. I didn't lie, but I also didn't explain. You can't tell a child. Mommy's choices detonated our family. So I just said she'd see him soon, and prayed that soon wouldn't turn into another disappointment he would store quietly and secretly for years. I didn't tell my sister anything at first. She didn't push, bless her for that, but she noticed everything. The lack of appetite, the dark circles forming like shadows I couldn't wash off, the way I sat too still, too long, the way I looked like a man waiting for the final crack, the inevitable breakdown. I hadn't cried yet, hadn't actually thought about it emotionally, except the context of gathering evidence and confronting her. I needed to break down, and it happened one night. My son was asleep and house was peaceful. I'd had a few drinks, just enough to soften the edges without blurring the picture. I was sitting at the kitchen table staring at nothing. My sister walked in quietly, pulled out the chair across from me, and sat down. She didn't give me a lecture, didn't demand answers, didn't act like a therapist. She just asked gently, "Do you need to tell me what happened, or do you need me to sit here with you until you can breathe again?" That was it, that one question, that one opening, and I folded completely. The tears came hard, violent, raw, the kind where your breath stutters and your face gets hot and uncontrolled sounds slip out. Years of devotion, frustration, suspicion, humiliation, pain, and everything I'd swallowed so my son wouldn't have to carry it came crashing out in jagged pieces. I told her everything, but not cleanly, not in order. Just broken bits, one after another, spilling out of me like the dam had finally snapped. She held me until the shaking stopped. And when it did, I felt something I hadn't felt since that night months ago, when her phone lit up with the message that started all of this. Relief. A small one, but real. Telling my sister cracked the dam open and everything else collapsed right after because of course she told our parents. She didn't mean harm. She panicked. Loved ones do that when someone they care about is drowning and pretending they're fine. My parents went into full emergency mode. They wanted to get on the next flight, to come fix everything like they used to when I was little, to hover, to comfort, to monitor my breathing like I was on emotional life support. But I refused because despite how much I love them, they can be a lot and I didn't want the attention. I didn't want the sad eyes and the constant checking in. I wanted three things: space, my son, my sister's calm presence, and silence. Enough silence to understand what the hell my life had just become. My sister also gently insisted I tell my soon to be ex's family before she could twist the narrative. She was right. My wife would absolutely build some half truth pity party version of events before the ink dried, if I let her. So I handled it head on. I called her father. A straightforward man to man conversation. No shouting, just the truth. He was stunned. Quiet in that heavy, world shifting way where you could practically hear someone's worldview rearranging. He apologized, which actually made no damn sense because he wasn't the one who cheated. I shut that apology down immediately. Don't apologize for something you didn't do, I told him. I just tell your family. I don't want lies floating around. He agreed, quiet and heartbroken. Less than 24 hours later, my wife called me. I answered. I shouldn't have, but I did. Reflex, maybe. Habit, curiosity, closure, who knows. But no sooner had I said hello than she detonated, screaming, accusing, demanding how I could betray her by telling her parents, crying, spiraling, dissolving into a mess of noise and denial. I listened for exactly 5 seconds, then hung up. She called again. I didn't pick up. Then she sent texts, paragraphs of venom and self-pity mixed together like a toxic cocktail. How dare you do this? You're ruining everything. We can fix this. Don't give up on us. You're destroying our family. I can't believe you're doing this. I didn't read most of them, really didn't care to, and I didn't have the energy. I'd become used to her being so erratic. And of course, when the papers were officially served and she exploded again, calls, longer paragraphs, guilt, blame, counseling could solve this. You're being dramatic. You're throwing away our life. I ignored every bit of it. I only texted her days later to simply coordinate picking up our son for the weekend. She wasn't consistent anymore. She skipped pickups, canceled last minute, showed up late or not at all. Maybe it was guilt or panic. Maybe she didn't know how to look at our son now that divorce was unavoidable. Whatever it was, I noted it. Inconsistency, emotional instability, poor follow through, all potential custody ammo. I held onto them like a man gripping the last rope, keeping him from falling into a pit. Every inconsistency, every slip, every missed weekend, every meltdown documented, time stamped, backed up. Because if this thing went nuclear, I wasn't about to walk into court empty handed like some clueless idiot. Hell no. I was going to walk in with a fucking archive. The divorce itself moved like a machine, cold, metallic, almost uncaring. And honestly, that was mercy. I didn't need emotion from the legal system. I had enough chaos exploding inside me already. If the process had tried to offer sympathy or warmth, I probably would have shattered. Instead, it stayed clinical, distant, the perfect thing to keep me from collapsing. I threw myself into work. Not because I wanted to be some inspirational phoenix rising from the ashes. Fuck no. I wasn't trying to grow or heal or any of that Instagram therapy nonsense. I was just trying to not get swallowed whole by the misery that woman had dragged into my life. If I sat still too long, the pain crawled up my spine. So I kept moving. Work. Pick up my kid unless I was slammed. Then my sister stepped in. Home. Dinner. Playtime. Bath. Then I'd crash next to him on the carpet with some train or Lego instruction guide half finished on my chest. Whatever kept my head out of the dark. And on the days I had the time, the weekends when my body wasn't running on fumes, I hit the gym before sunrise. Because the weight rack didn't lie to me, didn't gaslight me, didn't betray me. You lift it, it lifts back. You push, it pushes. It's the only honest relationship I had at the time. Simple, clean, predictable. Sometimes I'd even let myself go out just a little. A drink with coworkers, a diner run, a quiet movie. Nothing loud, nothing wild. I wasn't chasing joy, I was avoiding the abyss. And that alone helped. Just refusing to give away any more of myself to a misery I never asked for. I had stated multiple times that I wanted custody and made sure to gather proof in my favor. My lawyer practically applauded my documentation. I was the stable one, the consistent one. And I had the receipts, literal and metaphorical. Her missed weekends, Her volatility, her emotional spirals, her ghosting, her excuses, her negligence. Every time I covered for her, every moment I stepped up because she wouldn't. Screenshots, notes, call logs, dates, times, everything neatly archived like I was preparing to publish a fucking dissertation on her irresponsibility. We didn't have a mountain of assets, just the house and our joint savings, but I still wanted a fair majority. Practicality, pure and simple. I was the one raising our son. I was the one rebuilding a home from scratch. I deserved enough to actually recover. By the time court day arrived, I wasn't emotional. I was relieved. Not happy in a sunshine and rainbows kind of way, but relieved that the finish line of something that had been chewing me up for months was finally close. Court days have this weird silence to them, heavy, metallic. Even when you know you've done everything right, you still feel that tightening in your chest. I sat in that hallway with my lawyer, tapping my foot, because sitting still felt like suffocating. She was across the room with her lawyer, looking completely wrecked, eyes swollen, posture collapsing inward, nerves shot straight to hell. She kept sneaking glances at me, the way someone looks at a house they lost in a foreclosure auction, that quiet disbelief that something once theirs is gone for good. I didn't look back. I didn't owe her anything, not even eye contact. Inside the courtroom, everything moved like it was supposed to. Calm, restrained, no drama. The judge went point by point, reviewing custody, assets, parenting schedules, communication rules. Every time another piece of evidence was read out, another timestamp, another inconsistency, another contradiction in her story, her face dropped. Her whole posture folded. She wanted sympathy visibly, desperately, but this wasn't a therapist's office. It was a courtroom. I spoke only when needed while she was caught in this internal war between crying and exploding. The cycle I knew too well. Crying, then anger, then cursing, then blaming, then back to crying. But this wasn't her living room, it was a courtroom, and she couldn't perform her way out of this. Finally, the judge leaned back, looked at both of us, and delivered the decision. I got primary custody. Not shocking, but hearing the words felt like something inside me, something knotted and bruised and exhausted, finally loosened. Next came the assets. I got the majority of the savings. More than fair, honestly. As for the house, I didn't fight for it. I didn't want it. I told the court I preferred a clean start somewhere new with my son. So she bought out my share. She didn't like it. Her jaw said as much, but she had no damn choice. When it was all signed and official, when the papers were done and the consequences were sealed, I stepped outside and breathed like a man who'd been underwater too long. The weather wasn't poetic. It was just cold, cloudy, windy. Completely ordinary, but for the first time in almost a year, my lungs didn't burn. I could breathe without it hurting. Later, when I got home, my son was on the living room floor with his strings. I sat with him, built things with him, held him close, and put my face in his hair. It didn't magically fix anything, didn't erase the betrayal, didn't restore what was broken, but it anchored me. It reminded me that I wasn't lost and I wasn't drowning anymore. I was going to be okay, and so was he.